Being effective at your work and at your studying is an extremely important part of your self-improvement journey, as you can save time, which in return can be spent on other activities that bring you further. Therefore, it is important to enhance your productivity. In this video, I'll show you how to accomplish this. First of all, I'll go over some of the things said in Cal Newport's deep work, as I think the book is one of the best on this topic, especially as it provides some really useful information. Newport mentions different ways of executing deep work in your daily routine. One of these is monk mode, a philosophy where you make deep work your highest priority. In order to do this, you have to somewhat shut yourself off of all distractions. Some go as far as to stop using email completely, hence why this is a rather unrealistic approach for most people. The bimodal deep work philosophy is similar to the monk deep work philosophy, as you split up your time in parts where you obey monk mode and parts where you live a completely normal life. My personal favorite is the rhythmic deep work philosophy, where you set a certain starting point in your day that you always start your deep work on. For example, this can be done at the start of your work or before school, depending on your situation. If, however, this is still too strict for your liking or your circumstances, the journalistic philosophy will be the most realistic approach. In this method, you plan in certain times in your day that you're going to do deep work in. However, this implementation of deep work requires a lot of practice, as you have to go in and out of deep work in no time. You should choose what works best for you and your circumstances. Cal goes on to mention that you should stop working after the end of your work. I know this might sound obvious at first, but it is a common scheme for working individuals or students to work at night, which results in them not only having no spare time for relaxation, but also being sleep deprived. Chances are, if this behavior would be ceased, more work could be done just during the period of working, as you have to build up energy to perform deeply concentrated work. This is why the author suggests to have a set time where you stop working in order to do other things like sports and hobbies, for example, not only to be able to live life, but also to be more efficient in your work the next day. When doing this, it is important to be very strict. After ending your workday, you're not allowed to do anything that's involved in your work. You can end your workday off by having a consistent ritual where you list the things that you could not do on this day of work in order to be able to shut down completely. Some go as far as to plan their entire day on the day before. I do definitely advocate this method of structuring your day that Newport also mentioned in his work for many reasons. While at first glance it might seem like this way of planning your day somewhat deprives you of your freedom of spending your time the way you want to, it actually does something similar to the opposite. When you plan your workday and therefore give every minute of your workday a meaning, you end up being way more productive than if you were to just ramble through your day and give your entire focus to every little thing that comes up. This is how you end up having more free time that you can spend the way you want to. Some go even further by planning out their entire day instead of just their workday. Like Cal Newport mentions, we live in a time where meaningfully spent free time is rare. Through modern social media, many people end up spending their free time reading random articles, consuming content they do not even want to watch, and therefore polluting their brains with unnecessary information. This deprives them not only of their energy, but also of their time that should be spent resting. One of the best ways to counteract this behavior is to plan your free time, or even just to have an intention of what you want to do. It is often better to play video games if that is relaxing to you, instead of doom scrolling on TikTok, which will deplete you of your energy even more. When Newport describes this way of planning his day, he draws time blocks of 30 minutes on a piece of paper so his entire day is planned out. Nowadays, tools like Google Calendar can help immensely with this, as they can be adjusted more easily throughout the day, which is also very important, as you will obviously not be able to foresee the amount of time needed for your activities. You should allocate uninterrupted time towards your most cognitively demanding work in order to perform deep work. You will get better at concentrating by concentrating. However, you also need to get rid of your addiction to distraction so you can make substantial progress in bettering your concentration. Therefore, you should get rid of the habit of pulling your phone out of your pocket every time you get the chance. In general, Newport recommends stepping away from social media, as it has these highly addictive algorithms that are not only going to deplete you of your energy and time, but also literally change your brain. This is why the author advocates embracing boredom, as it is an important step away from this addiction to distraction. He also mentions a technique where he plans certain times in the day where he uses the internet and some where he doesn't, in order to create breaks from concentration. The idea behind this is not necessarily that social media directly decreases your attention span, but that the constant shifting of your attention from low stimulus, high quality to low quality, high stimulus activities teach your brain to unlearn tolerating the absence of new stimuli. The execution of this technique is said to counteract this. I really recommend you to take the time to read this book, as the author goes more into depth on these principles I just presented. I definitely advocate meditation. Trust me, after consistently practicing it for 2 years, the way my brain works just has improved immensely. Meditation is often thought to be this weird, complicated spiritual practice, but it really is not that hard to get into. While there are many different ways to meditate, the one you should start doing is simply concentrating on your breath. Now, it may sound useless at first, but the practice of actively concentrating on your breath increases your focus immensely. As soon as your focus drifts away from your breath and leads you into a spiral of thoughts, you simply have to become aware of this happening and redirect your focus towards your breath. Don't get frustrated if you're easily distracted, as redirecting your focus is an important part of meditating. The more consistent you become with meditating, the more automatically you'll realize that you're losing your focus. Think about it. This won't only help with overthinking in general, but also help you to direct your thoughts on your work, as you notice when you get distracted and ultimately redirect your focus towards your work. It will also help you in thinking thoughts more intentionally, so you can actually think on how you're going to solve a problem instead of getting distracted by other thoughts all the time. The app Medito can provide a good entry to consistent meditation, as it teaches you how to meditate in their courses by providing guided meditation. And it's completely free. I really recommend you checking out this app, as I respect their work, which is funded solely by donations. Cal Newport actually mentions a method in his book where he would intentionally think and solve a concrete problem while, for example, walking to his university, by directing all of his mental capacity towards this one problem. In the process, he would resist thought loops and distractions while structuring his thoughts. He states that you get better at this the more you do it, and that this will further improve your ability to do deep work. Meditation is basically something like the opposite of short-form content like TikTok or YouTube Shorts, as these social media tools not only waste your time but also decrease your attention span noticeably. Because you're constantly being stimulated with new content that is adapted to your specific needs by algorithms and packaged in a way that makes your brain have the same addictive response as with gambling, your attention is constantly being pulled around, which makes your brain adjust to this way of losing your focus every few seconds. As mentioned in Deep Work, social media is also brought up to have bad impacts on your productivity in work. Not necessarily short-form content, but as that was not a thing back in 2016, but because you're always expected to be available and to write back immediately, your focus never gets to reach its full potential. Therefore, Newport recommends stepping away from social media for some time in order to see if you really need it back as bad as expected. Obviously, most people may not be able to step away from social media completely. However, Newport debates whether the benefits the modern media come with are really necessary. He says you should base your actions on whether they are worth the time and effort, not on whether they are worth anything. You should always think through what you are doing with social media, and like everything else, judge if it really provides more benefit than detriment. He advises the reader to use the Pareto principle, which some of you may already know from the book The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Its point is that in many cases, 80% of the effects root back to 20% of the initial causes. In this context, you should think about which of the media you are currently using is the most beneficial and eliminate others. I personally recommend you to completely stop the use of any social media from the point you wake up to the point you're done with your work, and even then, it is important to be aware of your consumption, as wasting your free time that should be spent with learning, hobbies or resting is apparently harmful. No matter what, always make sure not to have your phone around while working, or at least put it on silent mode, as several studies show the detrimental effects a phone lying next to someone can have on their available cognitive capacity. Additionally, I'd recommend you to stay in general good health and to avoid drugs like alcohol, as living an unhealthy lifestyle will evidently be bad for your brain's ability to learn and think. Having a small breakfast will set you off much better than working after a big meal, especially of carbohydrates, as that makes many people fatigued, which will then inherently have a bad effect on your ability to concentrate. In his book, Newport recommends ceasing shallow work, which is work that can be done with low concentration, as it is often much more ineffective than it might seem at first glance. Of course, some shallow tasks simply have to be done also because you can spend all of your time doing deep work. This is because he actually mentions that there is a limited amount of deep work that can be done in one day. It is said that the capacity for deep work in skilled people is about 4 hours, but as this only counts for people who are experienced, yours might differ and be lower than that. Obviously, a full working day will be longer than just 4 hours, wherefore it is important to do your frog task, which is the hardest part of your work that requires the most amount of focus, early in the day, as most people are able to focus best in the morning. However, this also differs, as studies mentioned by Andrew Huberman suggest that people are best to focus when it's dark. I recommend that you'll be best trying out different times of the day in order to find out when you're the most capable of deep work. Don't overwork yourself by working too many hours though, as that ends up in inefficiency of your work most of the time, and because health should always be your #1 priority. You should always plan in sports and hobbies like playing an instrument, as variety in your day helps immensely with keeping your head clear and therefore your productivity at its highest. You need to have the will to live a focused life, as it does require a lot of effort and sacrifice. However, in my opinion at least, the benefits outweigh these detriments by far. You have to make the choice if you're willing to make the sacrifice or not. And with that, I thank you for your attention and I hope this video could help you at improving your productivity.